There's a conspiracy theory going around that says that the only reason that Donald Trump is even running for the presidency is to make Republicans look crazy and extreme and ensure that Hillary Clinton will become the next president of these United States. And now there's something that's going to add fuel to the fire of that conspiracy theory. It has been revealed that President Bill Clinton spoke on the phone with Donald Trump immediately prior to Donald deciding to actually run. This is being revealed by an expose by the WashingtonPost.com, who's been speaking to some anonymous aides to both of those men. 4 Trump allies and 1 Clinton associate familiar with the exchange said that Clinton encouraged Trump's efforts to play a larger role in the Republican Party and offered his own views of the political landscape. Now, when asked for a comment on this particular story, Clinton's personal office in New York confirmed that the call occurred in late May, but an aide to Clinton said that the 2016 race was never specifically discussed and that it was only a casual chat. Which, why wouldn't you want to have a casual chat with Donald Trump? No, of course. If you're speaking with him, you better have a damn good reason. So we also know that the call came as Trump was making a final decision about whether to run, and he was candid about his political ambitions and his potential interest in seeking the White House during the talk, these allies said. So, look, whether or not we believe that he came in to help out Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, at the very least, must have thought he didn't stand a chance against Hillary, or he wouldn't have been advising the guy to run when he already knew. I think he probably had a pretty good idea Hillary Clinton would be running.
But we're reading too much into this. This is a conversation between people who are acquainted with each other. Mm-hmm. And obviously, if you're friends with Bill Clinton and you're thinking about running for president, it isn't, let's pretend that these people aren't, that Donald Trump's not insane. You're thinking about running for president, and you're acquainted with Bill and Hillary Clinton. Enough so that they come to your wedding.
Oh,
yeah. You call him on the phone, and Clinton took a couple of calls, but then Clinton called him back and was like, "Well, yeah, you should get into it then." Like, and just, I mean, there's not like.
But so you think he can totally divorce his mild friendship with Donald Trump from whatever impact it might have on his wife?
Yeah, totally.
Really?
Yeah, I think he can. I don't think he's advising him strategically on. And he didn't say something like, don't, as far as we know, like skip Iowa, focus on New Hampshire and South Carolina.
Talk about the Mexicans if you get a chance.
Right. We don't have any evidence that came up. But I like how you began the story, really. I just was making a couple of notes because you began the story by saying the conspiracy theory that holds that Trump is entering the race only to demonstrate the sort of crazy right-wing nuttiness of the Republican Party to help Hillary Clinton. And I just I mean, Bush, Carson, Walker, Paul, Rubio, Perry, Huckabee, Santorum, Graham. Like, the problem with that theory, like, really, that's
maybe they didn't need help?
I think they were okay. I think they were good. I think they were good.
I don't know. You hadn't yet heard that all Mexican immigrants were rapists. That had gone unsaid. Thought, but unsaid.
Some, I suppose, are good people.
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
I assume. We don't know too much more. This is all coming second or third or fourth hand from a conversation that was held literally months ago. And I have to assume that Donald Trump didn't decide after the phone call. He probably knew he would be running. It's been talked about for a couple of years now. But I do think that this is going to fuel those people who think, well, look, Donald Trump has all these liberal positions. Why would he be running as a Republican now? We know that he's friends with the Clintons. I don't think that that's going to die out anytime soon.
No, look, Donald
Despite
Trump,
the fact that he's had very harsh things to say about Hillary Clinton in recent weeks.
Yeah, well, she started in on him, and then he came back. She's the worst Secretary of State ever, like in America.
Yeah.
It was my Donald Trump impersonation. It was pretty good. What I haven't read anywhere else, and it might be a rare good point that I make independently of others, is that while Donald Trump is certainly on one level hurting the Republican brand, the flip side of what he's doing at this debate is he's going to deliver totally unexpected and unforeseen numbers to this debate. He's going to deliver a huge audience to this debate.
That's true.
And that audience is going to see 9 other candidates and give an opportunity to 1 or 2 of them to shine and behave like statesmen. Yeah. And they are going to get seen by a lot more eyeballs than ever would have seen them before. And
that's true.
So if someone can emerge from the muck and seem less crazy, but still crazy enough for the right, but again, statesman-like, then Donald Trump has done a huge favor for whoever that candidate is. Yeah. Because I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm going to guess 1.5 million people might have watched this debate before, and now 10.5, 15 million people are going to watch it.